Hey everybody, my name is Sarah Beth, and today I just finished reading The Prisoner of Heaven by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. Please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his name. This book was published in 2011, and it was translated from Spanish to English by Lucia Graves. This book is actually a pretty quick read. It's a little under 300 pages, and I do think that it is enjoyable. But here's my problem. It is actually the sequel to The Shadow of the Wind by the same author. And The Shadow of the Wind is a beautiful, heartfelt, impactful novel. Not to say that this is a bad book by any means, but it suffers from sequelitis. I firmly believe that a book should be able to stand on its own grounds. Like, you shouldn't need to have read the first book to enjoy the sequel. Kind of like how Terminator 2 doesn't rest on its laurels, and you can watch it as its own film and have never seen Terminator 1. It doesn't rely on its predecessor. But with this book, I think it does heavily rely on you reading the previous novel. I think that the characters aren't really explained or developed in this book very much. There is a bit of infidelity which is touched upon, along with thoughts of revenge, or how do you react when learning of your past, something that happened many years ago. Does it still affect you to this day, or should you move forward or keep it deep within yourself? So there are some really interesting themes that are touched upon, but personally, I felt like this book was almost half baked. I think the author had ideas for this novel, but it wasn't completely formulated in a way where he can make an impactful decision or an impactful story to tell to his readers. I think the first book did that very nicely. I also believe that you will enjoy this book a lot more if you've read literary classics. And that's how it is for the other book. These books actually reward you for reading more, especially the famous novels. I believe, Count of Monte Cristo is mentioned in this book several times. Les Miserables is also mentioned a few times. It's very much the most well-known novels that are being brought up to the front. So don't worry, you won't have to be looking through obscure references. For the most part, it's very much on the forefront of the cultural zeitgeist. I think that the way it is written is on par with Shadow of the Wind. Honestly, his writing is very engrossing. It's not too fast paced, and I wouldn't even say it's medium paced, but it definitely keeps you enthralled with what's happening. There are actually certain scenes in this book where I laughed out loud. I chuckled to myself while reading. And I do believe that is a great mark of an author, because it gives you it gives you all these different emotions and feelings that should affect you outwardly, not just within your brain. And I think that if only this book was developed a little bit more, because it's also shorter than the previous novel, I think that it would have been truly as invigorating as the first novel. I think that for the most part, this felt more like a transition book, a transition read, because this series, which is called The Cemetery of Forgotten Books, is comprised of three different books, and this is actually the second of the series. I have not read the third as of yet, but this book literally ends in a cliffhanger during the epilogue. And to put it plainly, I don't think that's a very respectful thing to do to your readers. I think that you should complete a full story. And you should not, you can tease certain things, but if you've left your readers wanting more to that extent, to not even give us a firm ending, I I can't agree with that. I don't feel like the book really accomplished much. It almost had that feeling of, if you enjoy this book, uh, kudos to you. I appreciate just reading, right? But it felt like The Outsiders by U.C. Hinton, where the book felt cyclical. It felt like it came nowhere. It felt like it almost served no purpose, because you don't even feel like there was character development. You don't even feel like you were living in a world with your characters. You mostly just felt like you were being taken on a carousel as opposed to a roller coaster. Not as much fun. I think that I wanted to live with these characters. they are beautifully drawn characters. But there was just this emphasis on trying to, squirt this new narrative at you to just try to fill up the world a little bit more, as opposed to crafting a story around the characters you already had. It just felt like trying to put more lore into this series as opposed to continuing the story. So I'm going to say I will read the final book to tell you how it turns out, but personally, I don't think that this stands up to the original, and I'm not going to recommend it. I think that there's themes that you should that are touched upon in this novel that are really fun to look at, and I think that a recommendation, if you'd rather read something that kind of considers those themes of what it means to be a man, what it means to forgive, or infidelity, I think for one of those themes at least, you should read While I Was Gone by Sue Miller. And if you've not read Shadow of the Wind, highly, highly, highly recommend. It's definitely more on the whimsical side, like this book. They're more whimsical, but they also have this feeling of, if you've ever read the series of Unfortunate Events, which is written for children, it rewards you for reading, and I really appreciate that. It gives you this kind of feeling of being in a different world, of being able to embark on the adventures that these characters in the books have, just because you have something in common with these characters. So, I hope you like my review, and have a nice day.